Hello, everybody. This is the first day of spring, and it's my pleasure to have here Armand. Armand Chaplinsky. This is actually the only podcast where somebody will pronounce correctly your last name. So, hello, Armand.
Thank you. It's Sam Almancha. Please, thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Armand, we are going to talk about watches today, but maybe you can explain who you are and how relevant you are to the watch podcast.
Yeah, so my brief history. Well, I'm based in Poland. I'm a medic by background. I've been 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry, always in the CRO world, the vendor world. And during my career path, I met a couple of people with some strange watches. So one of them was actually very excited to have a Panerai. At that time, I didn't know what is a Panerai. But he was so excited that the name and the design kind of stuck in my head for some times until in 2005, I believe, I bought my first Panerai. And this is where my adventure started. And I can talk for hours. I mean, we'll be talking about that a bit later because it's quite an adventure with this brand.
I have to say, I've seen the first Panerai. It was actually not a laugh on the first sight. I thought, okay, well, this is looks very different than other watches, and then I started to like it more and more, and I like the story. Maybe you can then speak about I mean the story of Panerai. It's everybody who has a Panerai knows the story, but there's still plenty of people who don't. And I remember that we first met in Montreux at the conference at some buffet, and I was making my way to the food and court, and I was just passing by, and I said, "Hey, you have a nice watch," and you say, "Why don't you grab food and go and join us?" And by the way, there's another guy with Panerai over there. So, and I started to sense that Panerai is a club where you are always welcome, and this is kind of like a something more than just a watch. So this is a similar slogan than has Barcelona. FC Barcelona has Mes, their own club. So this Panerai is more than a watch. So can you explain the whole history of Panerai as we know it?
Yes, Micha, you're so right. It's more than a watch. So back in 2005, I bought this watch and I was wearing it. And then I realized that out there in the social media, there's a large group of Panerai enthusiasts. So I joined that group and actually realized there's plenty of us at that time around the world. And it kind of, say, changed my life, the way my life follow after that for a number of reasons. I mean, I will skip today. My wife has a Panerai, my son has a Panerai, my daughter not yet, but I think it's a question of time. But as you said, it's not only a watch. I mean, the watch itself, I love the design because it's different. I love the fact that a lot of people do not know what is a Panerai. They are intrigued by the design. For a number of reasons, they were unknown because there was no marketing campaign. Now it's changing with the new, let's say, CEO from France. They are diversifying, but that's a separate topic.
Yeah.
So I joined that community initially on social medias, and then I realized they all meet regularly, whether in their countries, France, Spain, Italy, UK, the Americas, wherever. But there's also once a year there's a meeting, a big meeting, organized either in North America, Europe, or Asia, that everyone is attending, and everyone and have probably around 300 people in mind. So I attended my first P-Day. It's called a P-Day event, Panerai Day.
Yeah.
And my first one was in Berlin when I knew no one. Today, I can truly, honestly say that I know probably a few hundred people that I would dare saying are my friends. They would say the same. That would host me wherever I go in the world with very open people, very nice people. It's unique. This is the only brand that has that. So this year, the meeting is hosted by our guys in Kuala Lumpur. So we are all traveling to Kuala Lumpur. So it's amazing. So in the past years, we had Chicago, we had Berlin, Athens. They were during COVID. It was more in Europe, Paris, Athens, Amsterdam, so Hong Kong before. So it's amazing. And next year probably it will be New York because that will be the 25th anniversary of this group called Paneristi.com.
Yeah.
So well, it's going to be a big event.
But I cannot imagine how does the event looks like, because you just like get together and take a selfie with the watch and say, "Hey, we'll see you next year."
Yeah, it's fairly well. It's a challenge to organize that because you need to find a hotel or two hotels that would host the events, host all the individuals traveling to that country. Second, the first day, pre-P day, there is an event hosted by Panerai, sponsored by Panerai, where we're
Yeah.
meeting with the current or the CEO. We are allowed to see a presentation of the future watches. It's super
Okay.
confidential. Of course, we are receiving some nice gifts.
Uh,
A couple of people we arrived like 2-3 days before to gather together, and it's yes, there are a lot of selfies, but it's more about friendship, and it's amazing. It's like having a maybe naive what I'm saying, but having a large family.
but
When we see each other, it's like hugs, and it's amazing. I think this is the only brand that does that.
I could sense that actually it's very unique, and I know that the Panaristi is like the strongest support group of any kind of watch brand out there. But the Panaristi, what is the typical customer of such a watch? But it's a huge watch. It's a 40 what 44, 45, 46.
Well, actually, the one I have here is 47.
Oh wow,
Obviously, there are two models that would be 49, but they're very unique. So they are large watches because the history. And by the way, I'm a purist. I like the historical design watch.
yeah,
I have a number. I think I have around 20 Panerai. Don't tell
wow,
my wife.
yeah,
So I have a lot of watches that are almost replicas, but they are, of course, they are real. They are not replicas of the historical model. Now,
yeah,
today, the design changed a bit because obviously Panerai is not a charity company, has to make money. So the models that are released today are interesting. They are different, more colors, more ecological materials. They are interesting. But for a purist like me, they are a bit different
yeah.
because they
But
usually the history is initially they were tools, they were instruments. So they had to be large and simple. They were actually designed initially for the Italian Navy frogmen. So they had to be large and seen under the water.
but who's the customer of such a watch? I mean, the watch is big, heavy. So it is a 100 kilo weight man with slightly presbyopic and quite rich.
Well,
Is it a correct description of the fan base, or
well, well, not at all. You might be surprised. I mean, I've seen some of my colleagues, women having that large watches on their wrist, and they look absolutely fantastic. So the customer is obviously these watches are not that expensive. Well, they are expensive, but they're not that expensive as other competition. Probably, I guess they are kind of middle range.
yeah,
So they are somehow affordable to a larger group of people. But obviously, being a collector, I have my collector madness mind. You have one, then you need the second one. That's the trick. When you join the community, you people are telling you, okay, you're buying one watch, but in a moment you will be buying more than that. Be aware, be careful. And this is how it works. You have one watch, the second, third, fourth, etc., etc. So for your own pleasure, it's not really to show up. It's like it's the collector spirit, I guess.
I was telling you that I met friend of mine, and he was showing me his future wife, and she was wearing a Panerai, and I was kind of immediately falling in love with her. I said, "Hey, this is the girl. You should definitely marry her because she looks so mysterious." And at the Panerai watch, wow, this is just like the icing on the top. So, is the watch still relevant today? Is it like a practical thing? Because we have time everywhere, and
Yeah.
I remember my son doesn't wear a watch. I bought him a watch, and he doesn't need a watch because he has a watch on a phone. And I remember I was actually in Barcelona, and I've done actually twice in my life the same thing. I complimented some other guy watch, and in Barcelona there was a guy who had Omega Seamaster, which you can go under 600 meters, and I and he was asking for a menu to on our table. I was passing the menu, and I said, "Hey, you have a nice watch." And he took the watch and threw it away and throw it across the table to me like catch it. And it was like a, I don't know, 12 grand watch, and I love the watch, and I have Omega Seamaster as well, and my one is till 300 meters, and I still wanted that one, his watch, because and I cannot explain it. It's not very. I will probably never dive down to 300 meters below the sea level, and I probably 600 meters, forget it. You'll probably die both at 150 meters. But I still wanted his watch because I cannot explain it. It shows the time. It has maybe sometimes it shows the date, and he pays 6 grand more for an additional 300 meters, which are totally impractical.
Yeah.
So is it a practical thing? Is it what is it that attracts us to these kind of items?
Yeah, I'd be very honest with you, with the people. That's my personal opinion. I I don't think I would care what is the mechanism inside, right? Whether this is 50, 30, 300. I have watches that you can go down by 1.5 kilometer, which are the typical submersible. Whether I would do that? Never.
No.
Probably. It's
Please don't
more.
do that.
Obviously, as you said, we can see time everywhere on our laptop, on our computers, on our, iPhones and other devices around. So the watch is really, for me, wearing a Panerai is like a sign of belonging to a community.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel good with it. So the other thing is that the design is fairly unique because you don't see a lot of watches with a special crown guard. Well, I can show the one I have, so you can see here the crown guard, which is unique for Panerai. You can actually recognize a Panerai by that. Obviously, there are different models without the crown guard, but this is something unique, and this is attracting attention to people. And they say, okay, what's that? And then we're starting to explain. Sometimes I remember it happens to be very often at the airports or restaurants or other places where I see someone with the Panerai, or someone is asking me, and then I'm telling the whole story. And actually, there are a couple of people that joined the community because they heard from me about the brand, the history. I think the history is important today. When you want to sell a good, successful, you need a history. Every piece of every good needs a good history, especially a watch. So the marketing department is important.
I remember that I told you love Panerai. I don't have any Panerai myself.
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet. And you were still very much welcoming. You said, "Hey, this is a group for Panerai lovers. You don't necessarily have to have one, but
True.
you have to." And it was still welcome. And what can we do for you? So I thought I just like guaranteed myself a pass to exclusive club. So that was a very nice gesture. If you want to buy a watch in Switzerland, you go to places like Bahnhofstrasse. Everybody's dressed up. There's a guard at the entrance. You talk to people. You get a glass of champagne and a coffee, and you talk about things about the watch and you buy it. And then I started to get like all these videos how people were buying stuff in US, and you basically have a guy heavily tattooed with in t-shirt, and he sells the watches from the shoebox wrapped in plastic, and he has a shoebox full of $10,000-$20,000 watches, and they are bargaining about the price. Why is such a huge difference between US and Europe? And they don't say the name of the watch like Omega Seamaster or Panerai Luminor. They would say 11068 model.
Yeah.
They would go by by the number, and it's just kind of a very kind of not very friendly to me. Do you know why it's what is your experience with the U.S. Market?
It's not such as this individual say. Usually the watches are set by wholesalers or boutique or the wholesaler where they have a number of brands. I mean, now the strategy of the company under the new CEO is to open a lot of boutiques, and they are actually opening a lot of boutiques in the key markets of in Asia, in the US. So that's it. Of course, you have other big names that are selling luxury watches. They will still do that, obviously, because in some countries, in Poland, we do not have a boutique. Panerai boutique, probably the demand is not as strong. However, I'm leading a group of local paneristi. We are like 250 people. I'm not saying that they are all active, but they are interested. And we have our local meetings that we meet once a year as well, locally, with 30, 40 people traveling together and just meeting in a restaurant or somewhere. So it's quite kind of amazing. But what you're referring to, the watches with the plastic bag, I've seen that a lot in Hong Kong, for example. It's amazing. So you have a shop when you have 100,000 of watches. Some of them worth really many dollars. But you ask yourself, well, this is a fake or a real one, because the
Exactly.
fake market is fairly developed. I've seen many Panerai watches that were fake. Some of them I had difficulties to actually to have difficulties to see the difference. So you really need to be an expert. You need to look closely at some details. So it's not easy. So you have to be careful. I mean, when you're buying a second-hand watch within the Panerai community, it's important to buy the owner, not the watch itself. If this is someone you know, people know, yes, do it.
Mm. What do you think about the replicas? Or I mean, they're like fake watches, and then they are kind of like watches who pay tribute. I know that there's some in Singapore. There's somebody called Grupo Gamma, which sort of surf on the history of Panerai, because initially the Panerai was made for the Grupo Gamma and of the Italian divers. So, what do you think about the replicas or the tributes type of watches?
The tributes, there are a lot actually. There are, first of all, we have the historical watches, tributes to something. You have some edition, like you will have a New York edition, a London edition. I guess it's a matter of lobbying. So when you have a group of people that that are your potential customers, you are creating the model that would fit their needs. Now, how about historical tributes? I mean, just by the design, was releasing a model that looks historical is the tribute to Panerai. For me, I'm a purist. So there are three eras within Panerai. This is the vintage era, where Panerai was producing his watches, we call them vintage watches for the Navy. Then they realized after I think for the starting from the late 90s, to survive, they need to produce watches for the civil market. And they started to do that between 93 and 96, where Panerai sold like 2,000 watches, especially France, Switzerland, Germany, which is called, this era is called the Pré-Vendôme era, which 93, 96. Before actually selling Panerai to the group Vendôme today called Richemont. So
Yeah.
we call that the pre-Vendôme era and post-Vendôme era, which is the current era. So everything which is from vintage to pre-Vendôme is, like, for me, kind of historical, because they were made by Panerai either for the Navy or for the civilian markets. After that, it's although there were some fantastic models released under the leadership of Angelo Bonatti, who was the CEO after they went to the civil markets. After Vendôme acquired Panerai, there were some fantastic watches, and actually this one, which is called 127, is a number.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's all called FIDI. Some watches have a name, but the name that we gave them, so they are known under some name, because otherwise they are numbers. The reference number, which is annoying, because sometimes you're scratching your head. Especially today, there are so many numbers, references, that it's difficult, to track all that.
Oh. And do the people like buy some other accessories with Panerai? And okay, and what's the deal with these kind of vintage straps with marked with the pen? This like a I love it. I love it, but it's not. I was asking here we have actually a boutique here in Zurich for Panerai. Like
I know
1 year ago opened, and I was
beautiful
asking for the
one.
vintage straps, and the lady, she was like shaking her head and said, "No, you need to go to Paneristi to get these. We don't sell these kind of vintage straps." What is the deal with this vintage straps?
Yeah, so that's another funny topic, because once you acquire Panerai, the fun start with buying straps and changing straps. So you have the ones that are made for Panerai by Hirsch, which are the official Officine Panerai. And they are beautiful, by the way. I like them. And you have, in parallel, you have a market of strap makers that are making absolutely incredible straps. There are a couple of really talented people within our community who are doing straps in a couple of countries that can be tribute to the past vintage. And the one that you probably saw, which is the number 74, or Decima Mas, they were some watches made with straps for the Italian Navy. So this is a bit of tribute to that time.
Oh, nice. I love this. Has a lot of history, and there's this story with Sylvester Stallone making. Maybe you can tell the story.
Well, when Panerai went civil, right, they had no distribution organization, no marketing, nothing. So it was for them fairly difficult to penetrate the market. So in the 3 years, which was the pre-Vendôme era from 93 to 96, they sold like 2,000 pieces. And they realized that they need marketing. And actually, they produced a number of watches for Sylvester Stallone, who was the face of Panerai at some point. Obviously, Sylvester Stallone gave Panerai to his friend Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is, you can see picture of Arnold wearing a very large watch. I think, not remember the size, but 52 or even more, or 54, which is called the Egiziano, which was a tribute to the Egyptian Naval Army.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is how it started, really, with Sylvester Stallone. He was actually wearing those watches in some of his movies. And then today you can see movies where Statham is wearing Panerai watches. So you have a lot, actually, of because they were always for dynamic people, the tool watch, hard people, not necessarily for females, which is changing, because there is now obviously you need to increase your portfolio, diversify your portfolio. So there are a line of watches which are called the Douai. They are very thin. So see, this is not thin.
No.
So today they are producing watches that women can wear, or people with very small wrists.
Yeah.
It's a market. It's a large market. Obviously, they have to satisfy every single consumer.
I've heard a story that the Sylvester Stallone was actually making a movie in Florence, and then he saw the brand and he fell in love with that and bought a couple of watches, and the history was sticking. But now the Panerai moved to Switzerland, and I don't know if you know the
Neuchâtel.
distribution of the watchmakers in Switzerland. 99% of the watchmakers are in the French part. uh, so is here we have in the German part, which is bigger part of Switzerland. There's only IWC and a couple of other brands. Then they are in Bienville, which is like bilingual. There's Breitling, and yeah, but then most of the watch making companies are in the French part. So I assume that Panerai is also somewhere in the French part.
I believe so. They are in a city village called Neuchâtel. It
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
very, very French.
It's
So,
not a small place. It's a decent place. It's also
all right,
headquarters of some tobacco companies,
all
etc.
right.
So
So I'm not sure what's the
normal.
reason behind that, but I'm planning to visit actually Neuchâtel, the manufacturer. As a panerista, you can do that. You can apply, and then you're spending there the day, trying to fix some to work. There's a workshop, so very
Yeah.
excited about that.
No, it's exciting. What are, in your opinion, like the red flags when you see somebody wearing a watch? Is it? Do you have any kind of red flags if you which would because when I see somebody with a very flashy golden watch, I know probably I'm not going to be like a best friend with the person unless they convince me otherwise. But with Panerai, I'm kind of like almost running towards the person. And the
Yeah,
same goes for Rolex. Maybe Rolex is also kind of I'm kind of thinking like okay, well, not sure here. You need to
yeah.
you'll pass the pass the test.
You have to be very careful because there's some people that are fan of one brand that you might not be. I'm not a fan of certain brands. I'm not going to list them because not to hurt anybody. For the simple reason that they are very common. You can see them almost everywhere. And my favorite joke is that, well, actually, this brand, my gardener has one. You probably know the brand I'm talking to, which
Yeah,
is not right, to be honest. I mean, for the brand I'm referring to, not going to mention. I like the vintage ones. I really like
yeah,
them a lot. Not necessarily the modern era. I mean, today you have to diversify your products, so you have to produce a lot of different products. So you need to expand your clients base, right? Panerai cannot rely on our group like paneristi.com because a lot of us do not are they are not really fan of the new models, although some of them are excellent. But obviously, like probably where the problem is, there's a waiting list, right? It's
okay.
very difficult to be on that list and to buy. It's everywhere. Everyone does that. I mean, if you're subscribe for a model of Rolex, you may have it in 3 years, maybe eventually. Depends on the model, of course.
Maybe conversely, you can talk about the your favorite brands because when we talked before, you said, "Hey, of course, the Paneristi. We have also other watches. We also other stuff at home, not just Panerai sometimes. Or we've been through some watches before. So, what do you think? It's a nice brands to uh, which are kind of friendly to Panerai owners."
Well, the other brands that my colleagues have, are, of course, Rolexes, the Omega, Tudors, the Grand Seiko. So there's a lot of fans of that, especially watches that you can wear when you're swimming, which
Yeah,
is kind of
yeah,
but
no, no,
but perhaps I'm a bit different because I'm kind of monogamist. I have one brand. I'm sticking to that one brand. I can't share my love with other brands. Although I know that probably if I wanted to buy a, let's say, modern era watch today, I'm not talking about vintages because vintages I like them all
uh,
brands. I would probably buy La Scrute.
Yeah. Okay.
I really like the brand, the design.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's large as well.
Uh,
I like simple design. Probably
I
maybe
would
it's
go for Junghans Max Bill, this kind of
yeah.
Bauhaus type of thing, which is not a very expensive watch, but it's also like a conversation starter. And what do you think about it? I have some friends who are like having like Rolex, and on the other hand, they have Apple Watch. Do you think that this is a good solution to have like a two watches, and we have two arms, so maybe.
Yeah, it's funny. When we were actually attending the PDA events, we all have two watches, two
Yeah.
Panerai and both right. This kind of tradition.
Okay. Yeah.
Today the word is changing a lot. So having to, I mean, the Apple Watch is really a tool. Sometimes people need that to measure a number of things, which is important. For me, a watch is like a jewelry, right? It's something
Mm.
beautiful we need to show. You're, sometimes people like to show their car, new haircuts, whatever. I'm just inventing now, but I think watch is something unique. That gives me again the sense of belonging to a community because it is fairly unique.
I had a I was watching some podcast of a guy who was explaining why he's having a Apple Watch, because I mean he was kind of like ambassador for Apple, so that was. But also he had a Rolex on the other hand, and he was kind of saying the story from like a Second World War, where his grandparents has to escape somewhere, and they paid their way with bribing somebody with a watch, and so they say that they have a history. So, what do you think as a watch, as a security watch, as a source of speculation for money, or do you think a Panerai is a good value for money? And I bought my watch, and I never thought I will like resell it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
kind of like this is I bought it. I might give it to my grandchild if I have one day. But I never thought of watch as a source of income.
Yeah, again, I'll be very honest. I mean, my opinion, that's my personal opinion. Um, I don't think it's an investment, right? With a few exceptions, of course. There are some watches that you're lucky enough to be on the waiting list and receive your model. Its price will probably, I won't say double, but probably increase by 50%. You can resell it because it's rare. It's called one of the special edition. So a special edition is this is a watch, a model that is done only once. Panerai, they have this limited edition, which are edition limited by year, so they can produce X number by year. So the special editions are because they are wanted, right? It's this demand and an offer. This is the market rules. Since a lot of people want that watch, and the watch is produced in like 120 units, maybe, there are people that sadly, the moment they buy it, they sell it. But certainly not from our community. I have not seen them. I have not
Mm.
seen that. Then there is a category of watches that will not lose their value, that we know that are more or less historical, that they
Mm.
won't be reproduced again, so they are maintaining their value. And then there are the others that you might have difficulties to sell for the same price, so we have to go down. I mean,
No.
before I actually I was lucky enough because before I bought my next watches
Yeah.
for I think a year or two, no, maybe 3 years, I was observing the reaction of the people within the social media to different models. So I
Mm.
knew which ones are worth, let's say, or investing or actually buying, knowing that I will not lose when I wanted to resell them. I think this is important. So I think today, all the watches I have, I will not lose money,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe I will actually make some money on that. But it's not really a question of money. When I'm buying a watch, I like the design. I'm looking at the design. As I said before, I'm not that interested by the mechanism. So there are brands that would say Rolex has a fantastic in-house mechanism, amazing. You know, the deviation would be part of the one third of a second per day. I
Yeah.
mean, my Panerai probably maybe 1 minute or two, and I don't care. Honestly, I think for me the best mechanism is the simple one, the simple ETA, right? They are the simple. This one has an ETA, for example. It was this watch was a special edition,
Mhm.
but with the ETA mechanism inside, simple, cheap. You can buy them very cheap, but they are reliable. So this watch was produced in 2002.
Yeah.
I still no problems.
And,
It's very personal.
what was your first watch you ever had? You remember?
Yes, of course. The first watch non-Panerai?
Non Panerai ever? Yeah, yeah,
Ouch. Okay, I remember having a swatch.
yeah.
So I had few swatches when I was probably a teenager, and then my first, let's say, watch in the, let's say, a bit higher league was a Mont Blanc, which I
Oh wow.
still have. I still have because for sentiments, probably. It was
I see some nice Mont Blancs, and it's not a typical watchmaker, but I like it. I like it. I have
yeah.
our financial director had one Mont Blancs, and I always was looking at it. So yeah, good choice. Uh,
So recently, actually, I find it so because I wanted to see it and to wear it, and I had the impression that it's larger, and it's actually very tiny.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Now comparing to
after
yeah,
Panerai,
Panerai.
everything is a tiny watch. How do
Absolutely.
you see the collaboration with Swatch with the Omega, and now I think there was another brand, Patek. No, it was not Patek Philippe. Some other brand was collaborating with Swatch and creating this plastic kind of watches. And some of my friends who have Omegas, they were like, furious. They say that this is hurting the brand. And I'm kind of like indifferent. I thought that this has dragged a lot of also attention to the original brands. So I kind of I don't mind. But what do you think? Have you any thoughts of that?
Well, yes, actually, I must said before, I'm a purist, so I like the everything which resembles to the vintage models, the historical model, which I know it's not for business purposes. It's not the right way because you need to diversify your portfolio, your products. So you need to be creative, and I know people they love that. Uh, they love when there's co-work with two brands, and
Yeah.
people that say they would never buy that. I mean, there was some. I'm thinking about Panerai. Panerai was working, I think, with Ferrari at some point. They had these Ferrari Panerai watches. I mean, within the Paneristic community, they were not really very popular. If I had a Ferrari, maybe I would buy one, but I
Uh,
don't. I know Panerai was cooperating with Brabus recently. There was a model which was released 3 or 4 years ago with the B Brabus, but it was just one series, very limited. So it's not like produced every year. So they are
uh,
testing the market.
uh, I was making fun initially about the paneristi, but who are the paneristi? I mean, as a people, how would you describe a typical person who has a panerai? Uh,
Now it's all the people. I mean, I'm thinking about all the panelists I know, and I know a lot of them. It's a deep friendship, right? There are people very open. They would help you. I have the chance that business and privately, I'm traveling a lot, so I don't need hotels really. I'm having meetings, dinners with friends, with families all over the world. Really, it's amazing. I mean, every country I go to, I am meeting with the panelists I know. There are no exceptions. Well, obviously, there are a couple of countries I'm not going to, never will, for obvious reasons today, geopolitical. But I have friends all over the world, and that's magical. That's absolutely magical. That they open their heart, they open their houses. Is the Paneristic spirit. I mean, the watch is secondary to that. But for some reason, the fact that we meet each year around 200-300 people traveling somewhere in the world, wherever, meeting together and giving big hugs. Uh, Initially, my first meetings, they were all around the watches. Oh, you have this watch, it's great. Let's take a selfie. Today, it's more about friendship.
Yeah.
Who's taking over the interest to the Panerai. Of course, we're a very strong group. I won't say we are we have an influence on the brand itself. Maybe there are a couple of people that would, but again, this is a business. This is not a charity company, so they need a lot of products different from different people have different tastes. Well, not yet in our Paneristi group. I have a lot of people I met in the street that had models that I wasn't fan of, but they were so happy. I will never say to anybody, okay, I don't like your watch, because the guy just spent $4, 5, 6 thousand dollars, and he will hear for someone who is knowing in the community that your watch is crap. No, I never do that.
Yeah. At the business situations, is it good to have a nice watch, or is it kind of? And I noticed when I bought a little bit of my Omega that when a guy is checking my watch at the business situation, and I always thought if he as a man are looking at some girl and with glimpse of second, and she always knows, and I always thought that I was looking at her such a microsecond, she cannot notice that. And now I see when somebody looking at my watch that I notice that very, very clearly. Is it a good thing to have a good watch in a business situation, or do you take off your watch just not to in some situation to look to get a better deal because they say, hey, you have a nice watch, maybe you don't need a discount on.
Yeah. Well, I never thought about that. I mean, in my environment, it doesn't really matter if you have your watch on or not, and the brand. I mean, obviously when you have on the other side someone who has a Panerai, know the story. See, there is already kind of, so it happened to me once or twice within my business, obviously, which
Yeah.
was great. So you're moving to the next level of relationship just for a second. I mean, having something in common with someone, as we discussed earlier, Michal, is great. I mean, in some countries, it's super important. In some countries, I remember I've been to a country, I won't mention that. They were asking, okay, what car are you driving? Was first question, which is super important. So if it was not a big black SUV, you're not a partner. So obviously, in normal world, it doesn't matter whether the person sitting next to me has a watch or doesn't have a watch or have an Apple Watch, or someone has an Apple Watch is probably someone who is into sports and active, and the watch would tell something about the person who is sitting in front of me, probably. But that's not the criteria, the number one, obviously.
I have actually a friend who's a different friend that I was talking before, who's also a developer, and he builds houses, and anytime he builds a house, he has a lot of money. So he drives some Maserati, and then he has to go back and build another house. So he sells the Maserati and buys some cheap car, so he can reduce cut the prices down. Because he said whenever I arrived in a flashy car, they didn't want to give me a discount, so I had to the time. I'm building. I'm coming with kind of like a station wagon. 10 years old, and I'm pretending I'm not that rich, and so he plays that with the cars. It's also a little game. So maybe my last question: Panerai, Italian company. Now you mentioned the French CEO. They're sitting in Switzerland. So Quo Vadis Panerai? Where is the company going to, and where would you like you yourself to see it going to?
That's an absolutely difficult question because, again, there is, in one hand, there is history, and the other hand is the markets. And I know that under the last leadership, it's going well. It's Panerai is aggressively expanding. I mean, they are planning, or they open 130 boutiques around the world. So to improve probably, so the EBITDA would be probably healthy. For me, as a purist, that's not really the way I would go, but that has nothing to do with business, obviously. So I think the company is going the right direction, simply because people are buying their new models. Even if I'm not a fan of them, or some of them are great. People are buying them. So, my sense, my feeling, my flavor for Panerai is different from others. So I have to respect that.
Perfect.
I'm trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. Armand, it was a big pleasure having you here, and thank you so much. All the best to all panelists out there. So thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Next time we meet, you're wearing a Panerai.
Well, next time you go through Switzerland, even without having a Panerai, you still can crash on my couch, as I'm one of the friends of the Paneristi. So please stay
Fantastic.
in our place.
So
Okay.
see you soon, actually, because I will be in Montreux in April.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Pleasure.